What's going on, guys? It's Zach here, bringing you guys another fantasy football video. This one I'm going to go over each game that's happening this weekend. This will be week 4, and I'll be going over each player that I think you guys should be starting and sitting. I want to apologize ahead of time. I'm dealing with a bit of a head cold here, so I might be coughing or have a bit of a nasally voice. I'm sorry about that, but we'll power through. Got to make sure we get you guys these videos. So super excited for week 4. We just had a super exciting Thursday night football. I hope you guys watched David Montgomery go off for 3 touchdowns. One of my favorite players to draft this offseason, and someone that made me very happy yesterday. So super stoked to see that. Super excited to get this weekend. We get our first weekend of London games. We have the Jaguars and Falcons in London. So that'll be a 9:30 a.m. Eastern time kickoff. So any of you guys that have players in those games, make sure that you set your lineups the night before. And if there's anybody that's questionable, maybe you guys are dealing with, say, Jones or something, not completely certain as to what his injury status is going to be, make sure that you just stay up to date and make sure your lineup's set so you don't wake up and get caught off guard, especially if you're on the Pacific Coast and find yourself in a spot where maybe you're starting a guy that didn't end up playing. So yeah, with that, super excited for week 4. Yeah, let's just get into the first game. Of course, as always, if you guys have any specific start-sit questions, happy to go through those with you guys in the comments. Let me know what you guys have to see. And then, as well as Sunday morning, 1 hour before the 10 a.m. Pacific time games kick off, so noon Eastern, so 9 a.m. Pacific time, I'll be going over my live stream. I'll go over last-minute injury updates. I figured it's better to do that before the 10 a.m. games instead of doing the 6:30 a.m., waking up at 6 and going through that because we might not have all the information there. So, yeah, with that, let's just get into the first set of games. Starting us off with the Falcons at the Jaguars. Like I said previously, this game is happening in London at 9:30 a.m. Eastern time. So again, make sure your lineup is set ahead of time. And if you do wake up after that game, make sure you guys have your lineup set and you're not going to be caught off guard by any surprise inactives or any of that. For the Falcons, Bijan Robinson's obviously a must start. He's going to be a must start in pretty much every game so going forward. In fact, he will be a must start in every game, regardless of matchup. I would prefer to sit both Kyle Pitts and Drake London in this one, although I do think Kyle Pitts can be played just because of how weak the tight end position is. His one good career game in the NFL did happen in London, so maybe there's a trend there as well. So we'll see what we can do with that. Outside of that, for the Falcons, I think Tyler Algier is like a low-end flex play if you need him. He's probably going to need to score a touchdown to pay off for you guys. I think I just prefer to generally leave him on my bench until we get into bye weeks or until we find ourselves in a spot where maybe Bijan ends up missing a game, in which case Algier would be a must-start. For the Jaguars, Ridley, Etienne, and Ingram are all going to be must-starts. They've been super productive so far this season, and even though Ridley hasn't really been fantastic the last 2 weeks, his involvement's too great. He's too talented. You got to start him. Christian Kirk's going to be a wide receiver 3 for me if Zay Jones plays. He'd be a low-end wide receiver 2 if Zay Jones were inactive. If Zay Jones is active, I think he's like a low-end wide receiver 3 regardless. I'd probably prefer to sit him if I can. And then I would sit both quarterbacks in this game as well. I just haven't seen enough out of Trevor Lawrence. He's going to have to earn it to get his way into my lineup. And then Desmond Ritter's just not a guy that I want to be starting really at any point this season. Next up, we've got the Rams at the Colts. So starting us off with the Rams, Kyren Williams is going to be a must-start in this one. He played 100% of the snaps last week for the Rams, and I know he doesn't look special by any means, but he's super involved as the pass catcher. I know the two receptions last week doesn't make it look like it, but he had 7 targets. He had 10 targets the week before. He's involved in the red zone as well. He's a guy that's probably going to score a touchdown every other week and have 5, 6 catches fairly often as well. So he's going to be like a low-end running back 1 for me. Puka Nacua is going to be a wide receiver 2 for me this week. The Colts play a lot of zone defense, which is really good for Puka and how he likes to play. Tutu Atwell is going to be like a wide receiver 3 for me. Tyler Higbee and Matthew Stafford can both be streamed if you need to. Tyler Higbee just got a contract extension actually today. I'm recording this on Friday, so we know they like Tyler Higbee, but he just hasn't performed up to a very high level from fantasy standpoint. So I'd probably prefer to sit both Higbee and Stafford, but you can play them if you need to. For the Colts, Anthony Richardson is back from his concussion. He should be a top 10 option. He's going to run the ball a ton. They're passing it quite a bit as well, and Richardson's looked really good. So Richardson's going to be a guy that I think is actually a borderline must start if you have him on your roster, unless you went with like the Kirk Cousins, Anthony Richardson route in your draft. Outside of that, Zach Moss is going to be a must start as well. He's just getting too much work in this offense. He's going to end up with 20 plus touches, and running backs that get that much volume, they end up performing well on a regular basis for you. So you got to play Zach Moss. Michael Pittman, he's going to be a solid wide receiver 2 or 3 for you guys, especially in PPR formats. I'm really excited about him. He's getting a ton of targets, and he's got a good shot to score in any given week as well, with just how big he is. Outside of that, I'd prefer to sit all of their pass catchers. I'm not interested in starting Joshua Downs or Alec Pierce. Josh Downs has looked good so far this season. I think there's a chance for him to emerge later on as someone we want to start, but it's too early for me. I want to see him be more useful in an Anthony Richardson-led offense. And then Van Jefferson just hasn't done anything for us for the Rams, so I'm not going to be looking to play him either. Next up, we've got the Ravens at the Browns. For the Ravens, Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews are going to be must-starts every single week. I know it's been a bit of an underwhelming start for both of them so far this season, but Lamar paid off for you guys last week with 2 rushing touchdowns. Mark Andrews is, despite not performing very well, is still a tight end 3 in fantasy points per game over the 2 games he's played. He scored in 1 or 2 of those games. He's probably going to get better and better as the season goes on as well. Outside of that, for the Ravens, Zay Flowers is going to be a quality like low end wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, depending on your format. Obviously, you prefer him in PPR formats, but he's too involved in the offense to be someone that is a must-sit by any means. Obviously, the Browns' defense is elite and somebody we should be considering at this point, but Zay Flowers is too involved. He's a guy that I'd be wanting to start. I would sit every single Ravens running back. It's just really gross out there. It sounds like Gus Edwards is going to be able to play. They've got Gus Edwards, Justice Hill, Melvin Gordon's involved. They signed Kenyon Drake. Keaton Mitchell's on IR, and he'll come back at some point, too. This is just not a backfield that I'm excited about unless they end up trading for Jonathan Taylor. For the Browns, Jerome Ford's going to be a low-end running back, too, for us. The volume's there. It's a tough matchup again against the Ravens. We saw him score twice last week, and with how bad the running back position is for a lot of you guys right now, you probably need to start him if you're the team that picked him up. Amari Cooper is also going to be a must-start for you guys. The Ravens' pass defense has not been stellar by any means so far, and Amari Cooper is just far and away the wide receiver 1 for the Browns, so he's got to be in lineups. Elijah Moore would be a decent flex option. He had 9 receptions last week. Super involved from a target standpoint. This is going to be a pretty pass-heavy offense, including even without Nick Chubb, and Elijah Moore is the clear wide receiver 2 here. And then I would probably look to bench Deshaun Watson and David Njoku. Deshaun Watson's dealing with an injury right now. We don't know exactly if he'll play. We could see some DTR, which would be super fun just to sort of see him play in a real game. And then David Njoku just hasn't been involved enough that I want to start him just yet. Next, we've got the Vikings at the Panthers. For the Vikings, it's actually pretty easy. Cousins, Jefferson, Hawkinson, and Madison are all going to be must-starts for me. I know Madison does have that worry hanging over his head that Cam Akers could come in and steal work, and I do think Cam Akers will get some carries in this game, but Alexander Madison's still going to be the goal line and third down back, and he's a guy that he hasn't looked great by any means, but he's still been in the offense for too long. I'm going to keep playing Madison until I see a change happen in that backfield. Jordan Addison, he can be used as a wide receiver 3 or flex. His snap rate keeps going up week over week, and that's only going to continue. He's a really good player. The Vikings need him to be a clear-cut wide receiver 2, and against this Panthers defense, you can certainly do worse than him. For the Panthers, Miles Sanders is going to be a running back 2 for us. Adam Thielen could be a solid flex option for you guys, although it's less exciting now that Bryce Young should be active in this one. Circling back to Miles Sanders, I do want to mention that he's dealing with a groin injury right now. It is possible that we see Chuba Hubbard be the lead running back for the Panthers in this one. That would make Chuba like a low-end running back 2 for me, a guy that you can start, but not somebody that I'm super excited about. Hopefully we get more clarity there. The worst-case scenario would be that we see Sanders come in on a pitch count, and if that's the case, then it could be really murky. So just stay tuned for that. Outside of that, though, I'm going to sit all the other pass catchers. I'm not going to play any Carolina pass catcher outside of Adam Thielen. I don't want to play KJ Osborne in this one either. He just hasn't been involved enough that I want to trust him in my lineup. Next, we've got the Bengals at the Titans. For the Bengals, Joe Burrow is going to be like a low-end quarterback 1, but certainly a scary one. Personally, I would prefer to be sitting Joe Burrow until I see him go out there and play like a healthy Joe Burrow does. So I think you could do a lot worse just because the Titans matchup is certainly exploitable through the air, so you can play Joe Burrow, but I think if you have a decent streaming option, someone that you've been rolling with without him, I would definitely look that way. Outside of that, Higgins, Chase, and Joe Mixon are all probably in your lineup, although I could see a scenario where you do find yourself benching Joe Mixon. He's probably like a low-end running back 2 for me this week. He's a guy that obviously hasn't been super efficient throughout his entire career by any means, and the Titans are in elite run defense, so you're basically banking on him to either catch 4 or 5 passes or to fall in the end zone in this one. And that could certainly happen. I don't think the Bengals are going to score a ton of points against what's actually a decent Titans defense, and it's going to be a slow pace of play game with Derrick Henry trying to run the ball a bunch and the Bengals not being able to really air it out. So it could be scary with Joe Mixon, but like I said earlier, the running back position is such a mess that you probably just need to play Mixon. I doubt you have 2 better options. Derrick Henry for the Titans is probably the only one that I'm excited about starting, and even being excited about him is something that I wouldn't necessarily say is true. He's a guy that you have to start, though. You took him in the 2nd round in your draft. He's been good enough. He obviously had one really good game against the Chargers. Obviously you need them to be in a competitive game script for him to play well, and I think this is a winnable game for the Titans, so I do expect Derrick Henry to be like a low-end running back 1 for me this week, and we all know that any given week Derrick Henry could have 30 carries for 200 yards and 2 touchdowns, so you got to start Derrick Henry. Outside of that, for the Titans, DeAndre Hopkins is a desperation low-end wide receiver 3 or flex play. I'm not super excited about him. He's obviously playing injured with that ankle injury. Ryan Tannehill's looked awful. Certainly don't want to be starting DeAndre Hopkins if I can avoid it right now. Sounds like Treylon Burks might actually be out of this game, so that does actually make me slightly interested in Chig Okonkwo. Him being the number 2 pass-catching option in an offense is something that we were excited about all offseason, and Chig Okonkwo is certainly somebody that could be very useful in an offense that is going to be needing to exploit a bad Bengals defense, especially against tight ends. So Chig Okonkwo is a decent tight end streaming option for you guys, and I'm obviously sitting Burks with or without him being active. Next, we've got the Buccaneers at the Saints. In this one, I think it's pretty easy. I think Rachaad White and Mike Evans are definitely going to be in your lineups. I know Rachaad White's probably like a lower-end wide receiver 2 and maybe a or running back 2 and maybe a non-PPR formats. I would try and stray away from him, but he's too involved in the offense. You're probably just playing Rachaad White, and then Obviously, Mike Evans, he's just been too good so far. I know historically he's really not been good at all against the Saints over the course of his career. He and Marshawn Lattimore seem to go after it every single time, and he's had like one good game so far in his career against the Saints. But I don't know how much I want to read into that. I think in general, Evans has been too good this year. He's receiving too many looks from Baker Mayfield. He's just a guy that's got to be in your lineup. I think Chris Godwin would be like a lower to middle tier wide receiver 3 for me. For the Saints, Alvin Kamara absolutely in your lineup, as is Chris Olave. It'd be interesting to see how Jameis Winston distributes the ball around. I'm assuming he'll be starting over Derek Carr here, but with those two guys, you just got to put them in your lineup. Michael Thomas is going to be like a solid wide receiver 3 option. Him and Godwin, I'd have like back to back. I don't know who exactly I would care to play. And then Rashid Shaheed's going to be like a deep league flex option if you need him. Not somebody that I need to play by any means, but he's could easily score a big touchdown in a given week, so you can play him if you need to. Next, we've got what should be the game of the week in the Dolphins at the Bills. I'm probably just starting every single player in this matchup. Tua and Josh Allen both need to be in your lineup, so starting pretty much all the receivers. Diggs, Tyreek, and Waddle are all lineup locks. And then Gabe Davis is probably a guy that you have to start as well. I know he's obviously the riskiest guy to have on your roster and play here, but if you're not playing him in a matchup with this high of an over-under, I just really don't know why you're rostering Gabe Davis. I know he's a very volatile player, and you don't really ever know what you're going to get out of him, but this is certainly one of the better matchups you could have for him. So if you have him, I feel like you probably are playing him. Outside of that, for the running backs, Raheem Mostert and James Cook would be like both like low-end running back 1s for me. Devon Achane would be a running back 2 for me, but he's got a super wide range of outcomes. He could be anywhere from a top 3 running back to just absolutely busting this week. So I have Devon Achane in one league. I'm starting him as my second flex. So not somebody that I think is a must-start by any means, but a guy that I'm definitely looking to get in my lineup. And then Dalton Kincaid, I think, can be used as a streaming option as well. The Dolphins are not very good against tight ends, and Dalton Kincaid should be getting a lot of looks in this game. There's enough opportunity here that he could score his first career touchdown, so I'm probably trying to stream Dalton Kincaid as my tight end if I can. Next, we've got the Broncos at the Bears. This should be a bit of a just very underwhelming football game, but should be fun for fantasy at least. Russ, Sutton, Javonte, and Judy are all going to be in lineups for me for the Broncos. I know Russ has been obviously much better this season. He's as like the quarterback 8 so far on the season. Honestly, I think this is a really good matchup for him as well. He should be in line for a good game. Courtland Sutton's been the wide receiver 1 for this offense. He's actually been really solid and honestly fantasy viable all 3 weeks so far this season. He's the clear number 1 wide receiver until that changes. So you got to play Sutton. Javonte, I know he's been a little underwhelming so far and hasn't gotten in the end zone yet, but I bet that changes this week against what might be the worst run defense in the NFL in Chicago. They gave up 4 rushing touchdowns to the Chiefs last week. I think you could certainly see Javonte get in the end zone. And then Judy should be in your lineups as well. I know he really hasn't emerged as like a consistent player for you guys just yet, but this is a really good matchup for him, and I expect him to get healthier and healthier off that hamstring injury, so he'd be in my lineups. Marvin Mims, I know he's been fantastic so far. I'm still sitting him in this one. I want to see him play a higher allotment of snaps. There are rumors coming in from Denver that they've made a bit of a personnel change that we should see him more. To me, that means he's just going to come in and be the number 3 wide receiver. He'll finally be playing over guys like Brandon Johnson and little Jordan Humphreys. That's good to hear. I think that if you need to and you really want to play him in like a deep flex league, you could certainly do that, but I just would generally prefer to see him play those snaps before I trust him in my lineup. For the Bears, Justin Fields is going to be a low-end streaming option for me, or actually a decent streaming option. He's obviously been a huge disappointment for us so far this season, but we just saw this Broncos defense give up 10 touchdowns to Miami, so you can kind of just hope that he works out for you. DJ Moore is going to be like a low-end wide receiver 2, maybe even a wide receiver 3 for me this week. He's not a guy that you have to start, but again, the Broncos defense has not been good. You could certainly do worse than DJ Moore. Khalil Herbert and Roschon Johnson are both like running back 3 range for me. They're guys that obviously are splitting snaps in a bad offense, but this game could be a situation where they'll be able to find some success on the ground. Could be a closer game than what the Bears have been seeing so far, so I think we could see a situation where both these guys have like flex-worthy games. And then Samaje Perine would be like a desperation running back 3 for me. You could certainly do worse in a matchup that I actually do expect the Broncos to win. I bet they bounce back here, and I think Perine should get a little bit of work and probably end up around 10 touches, could potentially score in this game, but I'm certainly not excited about playing Perine, so I'd prefer to sit him if I can. Next, we've got the Commanders at the Eagles. For the Eagles, it's pretty easy every single week. Hurts, Swift, Brown, Smith, and Goddard just need to be in your lineups. I know Goddard's been a bit of a disappointment so far, but unless you're in a league where maybe you're in a non-PPR league and you manage to pick up Sam Laporta or Hunter Henry or something like that, you probably just need to start Dallas Goedert. I don't think I'm really going to be wasting a second roster spot to play another tight end if I have Goddard. For the Commanders, Terry McLaurin's going to be a low-end wide receiver too. Certainly not one that I'm excited about. Jahan Dotson's like a low-end flex play, but I would certainly prefer to sit him. And honestly, I'd probably prefer to sit McLaurin as well. It's hard to rank him too much worse as like a low-end wide receiver too, but the volume just really hasn't been there. The Commanders really spreading the ball around, and this could be a really bad game for the Commanders here. Brian Robinson would be like the only player that I'm even really sort of excited about playing for the Commanders, but I do worry this could be another game like last week where we see him just get phased out of the game script. I will note that even though Antonio Gibson actually outsnapped Brian Robinson last week, Antonio Gibson fumbled again last week. That's like the one thing he can't do if his coaching staff wants to continue trusting him. I think we could see a situation where Brian Robinson starts getting more pass catching work as well, just because the coaching staff just loses faith in Gibson being able to hold on to the ball. But I think Brian Robinson, he's been efficient on the ground. He should see 15-ish touches in this game, and he's got a decent shot to score. So that'd be the only guy that I'm really even looking at with a strong consideration of playing this week. Next, we've got the Texans at the Steelers. The Steelers, believe it or not, have been really bad against pass catchers so far this season. So Nico Collins and Tank Dell are both going to be low-end wide receiver twos for me. Dameon Pierce would be like a low-end running back two. Not someone that I'm excited about starting, but he's got a good shot to score. He finally got in the end zone last week. He caught a couple passes. This Texans offensive line should only get better and better as the season goes on. So you could play Dameon Pierce, but I'm not excited about it. CJ Stroud would be a decent streaming option for you guys, but I really don't love the matchup. It's just that CJ Stroud's been so good through 3 weeks. Throwing for a ton of yards. His pass catchers look very competent, so you could certainly do worse than Stroud. For the Steelers, Najee Harris should be in lineups. I know it's been really brutal, but the Texans are one of the best matchups in the NFL for opposing running backs. This is a game the Steelers should win relatively handily, and if that's the case, Najee Harris should finally see a 20 to 25 touch game. I bet he gets in the end zone finally and should have a good one here. George Pickens would be a low-end wide receiver 2, maybe a high-end wide receiver 3 for me, and Freiermuth be like a low-end tight end 1, a guy that you can start. I'm probably sitting Jaylen Warren in this one, just because I don't think they'll be in a game script where they'll need to be throwing it a bunch, and that generally doesn't lend itself towards Jaylen Warren being someone that you want to get in your lineups. Up next, we've got the Raiders at the Chargers. The Raiders are actually really easy to predict right now because of how consolidated everything is. You're obviously starting Devontae Adams and Josh Jacobs, and then Jacoby Myers has been super involved. He's a solid wide receiver 2 or 3 for you guys. On the Chargers side of the ball, Keenan Allen and Justin Herbert are must-starts for me. Obviously, Joshua Palmer would be like a low-end wide receiver 3 now that Mike Williams is out. Quentin Johnston's a guy that I do expect to have a really quality second half of the season, but I'd prefer to bench him in this one. Just not somebody that I'm super excited about given how minimal his role has been to this point. Joshua Kelly is like a low-end running back too that I actually think you guys can use. I know a lot of people are going to want to just look elsewhere because of how bad he's been the last 2 weeks, and that's a fair argument certainly, but the Raiders' run defense is by no means good. With how bad the running back position is, if you have Joshua Kelly, I don't think there's any reason to go away from him right now. He could certainly be used as a starter for you guys. And then Gerald Everett's going to be a deep league streaming option, as would be Donald Parham. That's the issue with the Chargers tight ends, is they are pretty involved, but they're using Parham near the goal line quite a bit. Sort of makes Everett a little bit iffy, but if I was leaning with one, it would be Everett. He had 6 targets last week, and he could have even more this week without Mike Williams. But in general, you're probably just avoiding all the tight ends in this game. Next, we've got the Cardinals at the 49ers. This one's pretty easy. For the Cardinals, James Conner and Marquise Brown, the only two that I would want to start. Marquise Brown would be like a low-end flex play, and then James Conner is just a guy that you have to start. For the Niners, CMC, Ayuk, and Kittle are all must-starts. Ayuk is off the injury report. It sounds like Deebo Samuel is going to miss this game, which just boosts the other 3 guys. They should all have really quality games. Then if Deebo does play, you probably have to play him, but this is a scenario here where the Niners could get up 14 or 21 really early, and then why would they risk playing a banged-up Deebo? So tread lightly if you have Deebo. If you have better options that he ends up suiting up, I might look elsewhere if you can. And I'm probably benching both quarterbacks in this one, but if you want to use Brock Purdy as a streamer, you could certainly do that. He's a decent streaming option this week. Next, we've got the Patriots at the Cowboys. For the Patriots, the only one that I think is a must-start for you guys is going to be Ramondre Stevenson. I know he has had a bit of an underwhelming start to the season so far, but he just hasn't gotten the end zone. His role's guaranteed. He's gotten 73% of the snaps so far. He's being involved as a pass catcher. He really isn't losing goal line work to Zeke either. So Ramondre's a guy that's got to be in your starting lineups. I think he's actually a nice buy low right now. Hunter Henry's a decent streaming option at the tight end position, but the Cowboys defense is really good. I might want to look elsewhere if I happen to have 2 tight ends. For the Cowboys, Tony Pollard and CeeDee Lamb, they're both must-starts every single week. You've got to get them into your lineups. Jake Ferguson could be a streaming option for you guys as well. You're probably banking on a touchdown, but he's been involved in the goal line enough that you could certainly do worse. Every other wide receiver I think I want to keep on benches. All the Patriot wide receivers just aren't reliable enough for me to trust. Brandon Cooks is banged up. Michael Gallup's only had 1 good week so far, so I'm sitting both of those guys. And I'm benching both quarterbacks this one as well. It's two good defenses against quarterbacks who haven't really performed at a high level from a fantasy standpoint. Dak especially has yet to finish better than the top than a 17th overall quarterback so far this season. Not someone that I'm super excited about. I'd just look elsewhere at the quarterback position than either one of these guys. Next, we've got the Sunday night game, the Chiefs at the Jets, with Taylor Swift being in attendance here. Mahomes and Kelsey are going to be must-starts in this one. Isaiah Pacheco would be like a low-end running back, too, for me, although we could see what happened last week against the Bears, where the Chiefs get up so much in this game, they start playing more of CEH. I would prefer to sit both McKinnon and CEH in this one, but like I said, you could see a scenario where this game turns into a blowout, and then you could trust, or maybe play one of those guys. I think they could be decent DFS start throws. I think CEH would be my preferred guy there, but not someone that you need to start. Garrett Wilson for the Jets. He's like a low-end wide receiver 3. You by no means have to start him, but you don't have to sit him either. He's a really good player. You could obviously just hope for a big play like what happened in week 2, and you could do worse than Garrett Wilson. Breece Hall would be like a low-end running back 2 to 3, honestly. I would prefer to bench every single Jet other than Garrett Wilson, and I'm probably benching Garrett Wilson as well. It's just not someone that I'm super excited about. This Jets offensive line looks really bad. This Chiefs defense has been really good so far. They're a really good option in fantasy this week as well, and there's just no confidence for me on the Jets side of the ball. So I'm probably using Garrett Wilson as like a flex option, then benching every other Jet. And then I'm also going to bench every single Chiefs wide receiver. Nobody's really separated themselves. I think that Rashee Rice is probably the best option at this point, but it's tough to tell. Rashee Rice fell down at the 1-yard line twice last week, 2 more yards last week, and maybe we'll be talking about him in a different light. So he's someone that I'm keeping an eye on, but not someone that I trust in my starting lineup just yet. And lastly, we've got the Monday night game between the Seahawks at the Giants. Kenneth Walker is going to be a low-end running back 1 for you guys this week. He's been super good so far this season. I know Charbonnet's snap share has been increasing week over week, but Kenneth Walker's still getting it done. He's super involved in this offense that wants to run the ball, so you're playing Kenneth Walker. DK and Tyler Lockett are both going to be wide receiver 2s for me this week. JS tended to be a deep league flex play, but I'm honestly leaning away from playing him. I think I'm becoming more and more convinced that he's just going to need an injury to end up being relevant this season, sort of like what Quentin Johnston's been dealing with, and it's just not somebody that I'm super excited about the rest of the season unless there's an injury that happens. The breakout will happen for him at some point. He's an extremely talented player, but it just might not be this year for him. For the Giants, Saquon Barkley just absolutely needs to be in your lineups if he plays. Obviously, it's a little hairy because this is the last game of the week, and you might not know whether or not he's going to play. It sounds like he's been practicing, looked good so far, but we don't really know what's going to happen with him in terms of his status. Ideally, you have Saquon and Matt Breida on your roster, so then you can just pivot to Breida if Saquon ends up being out. Otherwise, you just kind of got to hope that you get information before Sundays, because if you're waiting until Monday night and then Saquon gets called out or ruled out, there's nothing you can really do there. So just stay tuned with that. Hopefully we get information ahead of Sunday's games, and if not, you just might need to make sure that you have a backup plan. Either you've got Breida, or maybe you have McKinnon or CEH in the Sunday night game, and then we find out between 10 a.m. and 5 p.m. Sunday. So just stay tuned for that. Outside of that, for the Giants, Darren Waller is going to be a starter for you guys. The Seahawks are not very good against the tight end position. The tight end position in general is just a dumpster fire, so you've got to play Darren Waller if you have him. Daniel Jones, I think, is a decent streaming option, as is Geno Smith in this one. Neither defense is super scary, and Daniel Jones might run for a lot of yards in this one as well, so I think you could play him. I'm going to sit every single Giants wide receiver in this game. None of them have really separated themselves. We've seen Jalen Hyatt have a couple deep passes. Isaiah Hodgins has been involved some, but not someone that I'm super excited about. Slayton's been involved, and really the guy that I'd be keeping my eye on the most right now would be Wan'Dale Robinson. He only ran 8 routes last week and had 5 targets on those 8 routes. He's someone that I don't want to play this week, but the Seahawks defense is really bad, and I think if you want to throw a dart throw at Waddle and at Jalen, or not Waddle, Wan'Dale Robinson and DFS, you could certainly do that. He'd be someone that might actually surprise us this week and end up being a popular waiver ad next week. So keep an eye on Wan'Dale, but not someone that you need to start by any means. So that'll do it for this week's Start Sit video. I've gone through every single game this weekend and gone over which players that I've been looking to start and sit in those games. So if there's any other questions or any specific questions you guys might have, feel free to let me know in the comments. I'm happy to address any Start Sit questions you guys have and help you get those lineups set so you can get a win this week. Up next, I'll be doing my Sunday morning live stream. That'll happen 9 a.m. Pacific time, noon Eastern time. So I'll start kicking it off probably around the 4th quarter of the Jaguars Falcons game over in London. So provide you guys with all the updates on the injury front and sort of help with last minute Start Sit questions as well. So do tune into that live stream. It should be a lot of fun. Hope to have as many of you guys there and hope to get all your lineups set and ready to rumble for week 4. So if you guys want to make sure you get access to that video or that live stream, just subscribe to the channel. You get a notification when I go live. That way you can just hop right in and put your questions up on the chat and I can get those rattled off for you guys. So that being said, I want to thank you guys so much for watching the video. If this helped you at all, please do just give it a thumbs up. Really helps with the algorithm, helps me know that I'm doing a good job, helps know that you guys want more content like this. So yeah, I want to thank you guys so much again, and I'll catch you next time. Thank you guys for watching. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, check out these other videos here if you haven't. If you want more content, please feel free to follow me on Twitter at RealSteelFFB. I'll be more active on there as the season goes on. Thanks. Catch you later.